There are 12 golden rules of animation that you need to know if you want to animate yourself. If you ever tried animation before, you know how hard it is to make something look good. But with these 12 principles, you basically have a checklist of things that you can apply to your animation to get a whole lot better. Wait, before we start, this video is not a step-by-step guide on how to make your own animation. That's because, well, I already made a video like this. Instead, I will show you the 12 principles of animation in today's video. I've read the original book by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston, which is the groundwork for every animator out there. But if you've never animated before and you want to know how all of these tools and features work, that's the last video, not this one. Alright then, my name is not DrawlikeaSir, it's DrawlikeaSir. As in, we are going to learn animation today like a sir. Number 1 is squash and stretch. This is the idea of soft material getting stretched when it's moving or when it collides with something. The ball is a no-brainer for this example. If it doesn't stretch at all on impact, it feels like it could be made out of stone or glass. But if it stretches, it does feel like it's made out of something like rubber. And this also goes for humans. Like here, you can tell it's a face made out of flesh. Whereas in this example, you still wouldn't quite know if this is a soft face or a hard mask made out of plastic. But yes, I can assure you this is my actual face. Now, the biggest beginner mistake here is stretching the object too little or too much. Think of this circle as a water balloon. When it hits the floor, stretching it only a little isn't enough. You gotta keep the volume consistent, so it would stretch out a lot more than that. If it gets flat, it also gets more wide to compensate for it. And when it stretches the other way, this also goes for the other side. Just don't get blindsided by all the squashing and stretching. An object still has its regular shape at the beginning. It only starts deforming once velocity hits. Anticipation is the second principle, because in animation, every action usually has an anticipation that comes before it. Anticipation, action. Anticipation, action. It's simply just a wind-up motion. Animating an action without anticipation is the beginner problem you see most people make at the beginning. And yes, the longer and more elaborate you make the wind-up, the harder your action hits. You could break this wind-up action down into 5 stages. Beginning, pre-anticipation, the actual anticipation, pre-action, and then the main action. Another reason for anticipation is clarity. An example from the original book is a character very obviously grabbing something out of their pocket. Without the wind-up, your audience could be confused where your character suddenly got this item from. Anticipation helps your viewer mentally prepare for this action, so it doesn't happen out of nowhere and your audience can follow along. Staging is basically something like the composition of your shot. Again, in the original book, they compare it to theater. Basically, view your scene like a stage play and think about where to place each thing. This is visual storytelling 101. You don't overload your scene with characters and objects. Instead, you carefully introduce one element each at a time. Just like a stage play where you guide your viewer's eye throughout the story by highlighting one thing at a time. There's also the 3-second rule, which is saying that it usually takes 3 seconds to understand a new element in a scene, so always give this some space. Don't be afraid to pause an action either to let it sink in. If you have too many new elements in your shot at once, your viewers won't know where to focus, so always introduce one thing at a time. And if you're not sure about where to place things in your shot, there's always the golden rules of composition. You can always get inspired by that when it comes to setting up your scene. And I will show you everything about composition eventually, I promise. And if you now add camera things like a zoom or a pan to focus on things, you now have a really advanced shot already. Combining all of this is the ultimate way to guide your viewer's eye. This is exactly how I build up my shots whenever a company commissions me for an animated commercial.
What?
You animate commercials for big companies? That's crazy! Please show us how you did that! Well, I'm glad you asked, because I use a tool called Milanote for my big projects, and they are today's sponsor. Milanote is a free tool that you can use to organize big projects like your own animations, mangas, or comics. When I make big projects like this anime commercial for a biker fashion brand or my latest manga, having a visual overview like this is so useful. I made a whole board on characters, a board on story overview, references, everything you would need. You can tell this tool was made for creative people. They even make color swatches for your character sheets. This is how I get big companies to hire me, since this looks a lot more professional than a Word document or something. It's also super easy to start new projects. There are over 100 templates to choose from, like character design, for example. You could easily use a character design template. Or for the anime commercial that I animated, I obviously needed a storyboard. You can easily just use Milanote's motion design storyboard template, and you pretty much get the exact same thing that I have, since you can also just replace images. And it's not just me, actual animation studios also use tools like these in order to organize their anime projects, because you can also use Milanote online together with your colleagues. And this is especially helpful when you work with a big brand, or if you work together with a story writer like I do for my manga series. And additionally, there are some built-in tutorials that explain all of this, but I think it's all pretty self-explanatory, since most of these features are just simple drag and drop. And they even have a mobile app now, so in case you have some ideas on the go and want to add them to the board, well, now you can. And how much does all of this cost? Exactly. It's free without any time limit if you are using the link down below in the info box to sign up to Milanote. Thank you so much for sponsoring Milanote. And now let's get back to the next step, which is straight ahead versus pose to pose. Straight ahead and pose to pose are two ways to animate. With the first one, you animate, well, straight ahead. You just draw one image after the other, and so on and so on. But most of the time, you don't want to animate like this, because you're basically drawing a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, and then your animation looks like it melted halfway through. This way of animating is reserved for unpredictable things like lightning, where a bit of chaos can actually look good. But for drawing humans, you animate pose to pose. You basically make little checkpoints in your movement to make sure your drawing doesn't derail midway through, and then you draw the rest. And since you made little checkpoints here, your character doesn't go off model. Pros call these keyframes and in-betweens. If you want to have exercises to follow along here, I do have an easy, slow draw along part in my first video on the topic of animation. So you could watch that, but before you do so, you should definitely like this video first. Follow through and overlapping action is all about objects that move separately. Overlapping action is just a delay to separately moving objects. And if you stop, well, that's follow through. Basically how this object still moves after the action. Remember anticipation? This is basically an extension for this timing for your character's accessory, clothing or hair to move separately. But this doesn't only go for inanimate objects, you can also apply this to body parts. Here's an easy example where you view the body and the head as separate objects, and you can move one object while the other object follows along. If you apply follow through and overlapping action to separate body parts, this makes your animation even more believable. And it also helps visualizing weight in your animation. One animation feels way lighter than the other one. The left animation makes him feel like 10 kilos heavier. For Americans, that's like 22 pounds in freedom units. Bottom line, if you don't view a body as separate objects moving independently, animating the most basic things like a walking cycle is gonna be really hard. Slow in and slow out is also called easing, and you can apply this by slowly starting and stopping a movement. If you just move things from one side to the other without easing, this movement can feel very mechanical and stiff. And here's how you ease a movement. First, you draw your keyframes, just like you saw before. Now, easing happens with your in-betweens. If you want to ease in, you draw a lot of in-betweens at the start. If you want a movement to ease out, you draw a lot of in-betweens at the end. The more drawings you add, the smoother it's going to be. And this results in a timeline that looks like this. Lots of drawings at the beginning and the end means very soft movement at the beginning and the end. I don't need to point anything out here, easing makes a big difference. And it's all because you timed your in-between drawings more to the beginning and the end of the animation. So you should definitely avoid spacing your drawings out evenly like this. This makes your movement look mechanical and stiff. Push them more to the beginning and to the end so your timing looks more natural. But sadly, this doesn't magically work on everything. For example, you can't just ease this ball here and call it a day. This isn't how an object falls down to the floor. For some examples, this doesn't work. For others, it worked perfectly. Now, this was just a little taste of timing, but before we take a proper look, we first take a look at arcs. Because most organic things don't just move straight when they are in motion, instead they move in an arc. Ignoring this can not only lead to wrong movement, but it'll also distort your art if you're not careful. Taking a straight path like this is most likely not the way to go. So instead, you always move in arches or arcs. It's also pretty common to add the arc to the drawing itself by adding a smear frame. This accentuates the arc for the viewer even more. So, next time you draw your in-betweens, don't connect them immediately, connect them via an arc. Secondary actions are basically supporting actions. Like here, our main action is Pep biting down on a cookie. But you're not quite sure about the context. Is he looking forward to it? Is he digging in because he's curious how it tastes? Is he forced to at gunpoint? That's why you bring in a secondary action, like him lipping his non-existent lips in beforehand, so the viewer understands the context of him looking forward to it. The main action is him biting down. Him licking his lips is just a supporting action that gives the context. You can also do both simultaneously. Like the main action here is me raising a hand. The secondary action here could be me being very angry and expressing that through my other hand. This is a secondary action happening at the same time as the main action. You could also have me look scared throughout the second action, or sassy, or whatever. It's important that this is not the same thing as follow through and overlapping action, since those are just basic extra movements. A secondary action actually has a meaning to the storytelling. Okay, now let's look at proper timing. In this part we look at our timeline. Every second of animation consists of 24 images, or frames. Not 40 and definitely not 60 frames per second. If you've seen that on a hand-drawn video, you can be sure it contains AI interpolated frames. Professionals always work with 24 drawings per second max. However, you can also choose to draw half as many drawings per second, so just 12 drawings. And sometimes even a third of that is enough, so 8 drawings per second. That's called drawing on 1s, 2s, or 3s. If you want to know about this in detail, just check out my first animation video. But in a nutshell, your timing can affect the mood of your scene. Lots of drawings equal slow movement, less drawings equal fast movement. This Marcel here could be thinking about something important, this Marcel here just realized something, and this Marcel could be shocked by something. Like maybe he saw someone actually spelling his name right. Exaggeration is self-explanatory. You have something like a pose, and then you push or exaggerate that pose. Now, important, this is not about realism. Yeah, obviously, animation can look deformed or weird when you pause it, but that's not the point. It's important to make it look good in motion. And exaggerating your pose is the perfect way to achieve this. Some pros really push their poses to the maximum, so the whole movement is gonna get a big boost in momentum. You can exaggerate everything, even faces. A character is evil, well, make him look more evil. You can always exaggerate when something's dramatic. Don't be fooled by people pausing animation and making fun about it. If they want realism, they can watch a movie. What's solid drawing? Well, this translates to learn to draw. You noob. That's kind of what the book says. It's mostly about being so good at drawing that your characters don't look flat, but rather 3D. Obviously, 2D characters can only move 2-dimensional. 3D characters can believably move 3D. You know the drill, you'll need to be able to split your drawings into 3D shapes before actually drawing them. If you are not able to do this, you'll regret it when you draw something other than, like, anime lip flaps. But how do you learn to draw 3D instead of flat 2D art? Exactly with this video of mine. It's all explained there with some very easy exercises. And now the very last principle is appeal, which is basically character design, but for animation. Like, when you design a character for animation, you need to watch things like line mileage. The less detail and lines your characters have, the better, because you need to draw all of these details again and again and again in every single frame. But yeah, obviously all of your characters should look appealing, which does not mean they should all look the same. It means they should all have unique silhouettes and shapes. The more obvious your shapes are, the easier it is to animate. Shapes make for great character design. They tell you a lot about a character's personality. These are all basics when it comes to designing a character, and if you want to know more about designing a character, along with some mediocre humor by me, I've got great news because I've made a video on character designing basics. Check it out right here, or maybe check out my other video on animation. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.